Hi, welcome everyone, and thanks for your patience with all the parking situation outside. Um, Perhaps Michelle Obama, with her unflappable grace and strength, is even more beloved now than she was when her husband was president. There's a reason her biography is currently the best-selling book in the country. In the Montclair Local this week, our guest, Veronica Chambers, I feel she perfectly summed up and encapsulated the Michelle phenomenon with these words. She's come to represent a sense of American womanhood. It's not that she transcends race, she never leaves it behind. That really spoke to me. I should let her say those beautiful things to you. But we're so privileged to welcome Veronica, the editor of the best-selling essay collection, The Meaning of Michelle, to our stage. The Washington Post has said of the book, "This is a series of thoughtful meditations on the complexities of the woman who is both partner to the leader of the free world and a powerful American figure in her own right. The Obama in these pages is both an icon and a homegirl. The writers take her seriously, yet still write about her playfully." And if you know these two women, you know the writing is going to be playful. So, Veronica Chambers is a prolific journalist, editor, and author who has held senior editorial roles at Newsweek, Glamour, and Good Housekeeping. I think I'm right about this. Were you the very first African-American woman editor at the New York Times Magazine? That is true. She was also the very first African-American woman writer at the New York Times Magazine. So she is amazing. Okay, we lost my way here. Let's see. She is currently the editor leading the New York Times archival storytelling team, a new initiative devoted to publishing articles based on photographs recently rediscovered in the paper's archives. Veronica has written several books, including Mama's Girl, a critically acclaimed memoir, Yes Chef with Marcus Samuelsson, and 32 Yolks with Eric Rippert, and also Queen Bey, a celebration of the power and creativity of Beyonce Knowles Carter, which I didn't realize you were able to get today, but you are, if you'd like to get it early. Joining Veronica on the stage tonight are two very acclaimed Montclair authors, both of whom contributed personal essays to The Meaning of Michelle. We are so blessed to have the literary talent that we have in our community here, and these women testify to that. Benilde Little is the best-selling author of the novels Good Hair, which I loved, The Itch, Acting Out, and Who Does She Think She Is, as well as the very open and honest memoir, Welcome to My Breakdown. She's also worked as a reporter for People and as a senior editor at Essence. Ylonda Gault Cavanes, am I saying your? You can leave that part out. Leave out the Cavanes. Okay. I should have fact-checked this upstairs. Very sorry. I was like too fascinated with their conversation. I was up there to fact-check, and then I. Okay. Former senior producer at iVillage, has been a parenting journalist for more than a decade. She has written for Redbook, Health, Parenting, and Pregnancy. She's the author of Child Please, How Mama's Old School Lessons Helped Me Check Myself Before I Wrecked Myself. Veronica, Benilde, and Ylonda, I want to thank you so much for donating your time. These authors donate their time when they come here. And for gracing our stage tonight, and the book's for sale afterwards. And I wanted to also just mention, I don't know if Rachel's here, I don't see her, but Rachel Swarns from our Open Book, Open Mind Advisory Committee, which is a group of authors and editors and publishers in town, brought this panel to our attention. It was really her idea, so I wanted to thank her as well. So thank you. I will stop talking and let these people talk.
Thank you. So I wanted to start by asking these two wonderful writers to read. The Meaning of Michelle is a collection of essays, and we had 16 writers write essays. And if you can imagine all the people that wanted to write about Michelle Obama, it was really difficult to pare it down for 16. Benilde and Ylonda were two that I sort of felt like once they said yes, the book was made. And I've been a big fan of Benilde's work for so long. And, you know, I'll tell you why I picked each of them. And one of the things is that I love the way that Benilde writes about race and class. And so, Benilde, do you want to read a little from your essay?
So Veronica called me. I was on the 66, right? And you know, you can't talk on the phone, right? And you guys probably don't know this about me. My daughter does, but I'm a serious rules follower, despite my rebel nature. And, but it was Veronica, who I loved, who I've loved since she was, what, 19, 20? That's when we met. And so it was like, hello. And I just said yes. There was no thinking about it. It was yes. So, because I love her, and of course, I love Michelle. So I'm going to jump around. My essay is long. It's called Michelle in High Cotton. The first time I saw a picture of Michelle post the 2008 inauguration, I literally cried. She was featured in the style section of the Sunday New York Times, dressed in that fabulous custom-made purple dress. I was reading in bed next to my husband, who handed me the section, knowing it was the first thing I read. I got a few lines into the story, welled up, and literally burst out crying. "Why are you crying?" Cliff asked. By now, he was used to me breaking into tears the way some people break into song. "I'm just so happy she's just like me." She was the first woman I'd ever seen in the New York Times or any majority media outlet with whom I completely identified. She was part of my tribe. He looked at me, surely thinking, she ain't really. But my dear husband had the good sense to keep his opinion to himself. He must have understood that I knew something he didn't, an unuttered, undecipherable code of black womanhood that he'd never been able to tune into. It's kind of like the way we say girl to each other, but more nuanced. Girl can be an appraisal, but a loving one that basically says, I see you, you are me, I am you. I'm not going to front. I'm not talking about all black women. We are not a monolith. We have nuances, and there are tribes within this tribe. Michelle is part of my tribe. Pre-Michelle, the black women in media who weren't Halle Berry or Oprah were either pitch perfect high bouge or stone cold Gettonians, Lil' Kim. No shades, no complexity as humans, as the humans we are. We can be round the way, love our peeps from the hood, be comfortable having drinks with our girls at the Mandarin Oriental, sit on museum boards, have close friends with white girls. Some of us have white husbands, all while holding on to an inner compass, not one set by someone else's judgment of what's best. Michelle was a real hard-working professional from a working-class South-Side Chicago family who shuttled her daughters to dance lessons and movie play dates on Saturdays, just like I did. She looked regular, could look amazing, like in that purple sheet, or not, sometimes photographed with her hair pulled back, and not in a cute chignon, but in that I need to go to the beauty parlor, but I don't have time look. Her good Chicago friend, Yvonne Davila, insists that Michelle is real. She is you, she is me, she is everybody. Coming from the South Side provides natives with a very specific sense of place. Chicago is an extremely racially polarized city, and Michelle has that thing people from the South Side have. I have a good friend who grew up there and says, it's hard to get that South Side out of us. I asked her to explain it, and this is what I gathered. Folks there have a defiant groundedness, a resoluteness, perhaps born in the Black Belt, Alabama, Mississippi, where most black Chicagoans come from. The Black Belt had the largest cash crop, cotton, and those enslaved there, it has been said, were treated most harshly. To be clear, that's like saying the whippings were every day instead of, 6 days a week. Their good friend and political godmother, Valerie Jarrett, is black Chicago royalty and referred to as Barack's secret weapon. Valerie, who grew up going to her family's home on Martha's Vineyard, introduced the black bourgeois Mecca to Michelle and Barack. The writer Touré wrote a piece for New York Magazine about the ritual gathering, the generational ownership of homes on the island, and in his view, the myriad criteria for being welcome there. While trying to unlock the mystery of the island's attraction and assess the vineyard's suitability as a vacation spot for our new first family, he spoke to one anonymous, snobby, longtime islander who reportedly questioned Michelle Obama's place in the group's hierarchy, referring to the First Lady as a, quote, ghetto girl. The actual quote Michelle Obama is basically a ghetto girl. She grew up in the same place Jennifer Hudson did. She hasn't reached out to the social community of Washington. I know, really? Clutch the damn pearls. Fortunately, there was a loud outcry of such a statement, including those from the established old guard. They got together and wrote a letter to the Vineyard Gazette and complained that Touré had portrayed them as a bunch of racist snobs. They welcomed our Michelle. You want me to? Okay, I'm going to just wrap up.
No, you're good.
Yes. In 2007, Michelle told Vogue magazine, "I say this not to be modest, but there are so many young people who could be me. There's nothing magical about my background. I am not a super genius. I had good parents and some good teachers and some decent breaks, and I work hard. Every other kid I knew could have been me, but they got a bad break and didn't recover. It's like I tell young people I talk to, the difference between success and failure in our society is a very slim margin. You almost have to have that perfect storm of good parents, self-esteem, and good teachers. It's a lot, which is why Barack and I believe so passionately in investing in education and strengthening institutions." The thing is, Michelle is like so many of us, and she knows it. She was raised by striving black working class parents. During the time we grew up, pretty much all black parents were strivers, and I don't mean that in a grubbing social climbing way. No, it was an achievement climb. It was about uplift and not about emulating white folks. The dream was that we would hold on to our values we learned in those black neighborhoods, and then we'd go out and conquer, but we wouldn't, quote, forget our raisin. That didn't quite happen, or it didn't happen for enough of us. We did not all hold on to our essential selves. Michelle did. She brought her mama with her to the White House, which means she brought her home with her. She and Barack have the same friends and brought them along too. It's hard being oneself under a microscope. And the miracle of Michelle is that she seems to always have held on to her authentic self, with lots of her middle name, Lavon, holding center. Unlike me, who traveled a path to get back to my authentic Neil. That's my nickname. Anybody from Newark knows that. There's something enviable now about women who don't spend a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. Michelle went away to college, to law school, but moved back to her hometown and settled into her professional life, married and became a mother, all within the 5-mile radius. There's a lot to be said for that. Michelle resonates for us on a deeply personal level. She's giving us permission to be ourselves on a national stage, to be proud of our blackness, our realness, our humble beginnings, our regularness, our greatness. To not be perfect, to not even have that as a goal, because she's smart enough to understand that perfection is its own prison. When we look back on the Obama stay at 1600, as fantastical and far-fetched as his presidency seemed to be 8 years ago, it was as real as Michelle. A dark-skinned, working-class black girl marries a biracial, black-identified intellectual who ends up becoming the leader of the free world. They raise their young daughters into womanhood under a spotlight with not a whiff of bad public behavior. It's not a story even the best of us would have dared to dream, much less write. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benilde. There's so many questions I want to ask coming off of that, but I'm going to remember them. Ylonda, could you read a little bit from your essay?
Sure. So I have a, is this on? Okay. I feel like I'm supposed to say, microphone check, check. Okay. My essay is called We Go Way Back. We go way back. Back to the enchanting little black girl rhymes of wooden paddle balls, jacks, and double Dutch ditties. Ice cream, cherry on top. How many boyfriends does Shell got? 1, 2, 3, 4. We go back like well-greased Afro puffs, bony knees and narrow hips, shaking till our backbones slip. We go back like playing the dozens with Pumpkin, Junebug, and Tiny, whose pretty moon face and wide-bodied frame never let a honey bun go unloved. We shared secrets, dance moves, Right On magazine centerfolds, and Grape Now laters. It was the 1970s. She and I reveled in our blackness, in our fineness, and at the same damn time. Modest means did not define us, instead emboldened us, sharpened our senses, granting license to cast the "don't come for me" stank eye to any interloper out to test the badassery we wore with the ease and pride of bold printed culottes. Please, I've been knowing Michelle LaVaughn Robinson. Her power, her style, her stance, her cadence, every idiosyncrasy, including the single raised eyebrow and pursed-lipped half smile. It is as familiar to me as stovetop hot combs and fried chicken gizzards. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you better ask somebody. But just don't ask Shell. When she burst onto the national scene as Mrs. Barack Obama more than a decade ago, she and I needed no introduction. We were old friends. My girl does not suffer foolishness. She will graciously oblige, but with a knowing look, I can tell that she is not here for simple-minded queries into her intrinsic strength, her mother wit, or her straight-up truth. I saw it back in 2007 when 60 Minutes' Steve Croft asked if she feared for her husband's safety as a presidential candidate. Michelle Obama looked dead in the camera. The reality is, as a black man, Barack can get shot at the gas station. Translation, please, we all know what time it is. Months later, she gave me and other women an inside wink with CNN's Larry King in an attempt to contrast the Bush administration's stubborn stance on warring with Iraq. King wanted to know if the then presumptive presidential nominee had a mind that could be changed. I change it every day, she deadpanned. In other words, you better recognize. The white media establishment was not ready. New York Times columnist Maureen Dowd wrote, "She came on strong. I wince a bit when Michelle Obama chides casting Barack as an undisciplined child," quote unquote. Days later, when Mrs. Obama sat her tall, dark, and lovely self down with the View's round-tabled hosts, Barbara Walters wanted her reaction on the piece. And I quote, "I can't even give that any attention," Michelle said. "She," meaning Dowd, "doesn't know me or what's going on in our household." Paraphrase, girl, bye. Mrs. Obama does not back down. No, she didn't stutter in February 2008 when we heard her say, quote unquote, "For the first time in my adult lifetime, I am really proud of my country." Clarifying the statement on The View, she countered that only in America could working-class parents on the south side of Chicago send her and her brother to Princeton University. But until primary voters turned out in such large numbers, she was not certain we as a nation could look past race. In other words, she said, "I ain't sorry." Why should she be apologetic? Come to think of it, why should I? Michelle did not come to play. Yes, she is proud in her role as Mrs. Obama, and rightly so. She gives Barack his propers all day long, loving and supporting his candidacy. But she never set out to function as a mere prop to his or anyone else's agenda. Fearlessly and fiercely, everything about this startling bad mamma jamma from the Chi shouted to the world, "I am a strong black woman," and not strong in that long-suffering, carrying the burdens of generations way many of us have come to know from our mamas, their mamas, and the mamas before them. I'm talking about strong in a brand new way. A strong that declares, "You don't get to define me, only I get to define me." It may seem like a reach. Certainly my intention is not to disrespect our ancestors in any way. But Michelle Obama set me free. Probably she set all women free in a way. Sojourner Truth once said, if women want rights more than that they got, why don't they just take them and not be talking about it?
So, a lot to talk about. I thought that we should start by talking about authenticity, because I think that, you both touch on this sense of keeping yourself and staying yourself, and yet we know within these contexts that we've all been in, be it a certain school or a certain work environment, it's really hard to stay yourself. So, can we talk about it in context of her and also your own lives and what you bring to these essays?
I think, do you want to-
No, you go.
I think that what many of us, or I just can just say what I got from Michelle Obama, was more affirmation and confirmation. And I think we reach a certain age, and I'm that certain age, where there's just no other way to be. And I think that when Michelle models what she models, in other words, that freeness, that freedom, we recognize that that is where your strength really is. In your 20s, you're not sure. In your 30s, you're still a little unsure. But then I think you get to a point, and I think what I love about Michelle Obama is that she stood as this shining example of this, is that if you don't own you, if you don't come into the world as who you are, if you don't show up as who you are, you have no power. Your power lies in what came before you. I mean, as a Black woman, as a mom, as a wife, it's all in you. And I think that professionally, personally, it takes a while to get there. I think we're not all like Michelle Obama in that way. I think she probably woke up like that. But I think for the others of us, I mean, you get to it. You get to it to a certain point.
It's interesting. Benilde, what's your thought?
I think, what I said, what I wrote, and what Ylonda just said is absolutely true. I do think when I read her book, when I was a little surprised that she said a bunch of times, questioning whether she was good enough, and even she, and that was like a relief to see that in her book, because she does appear to have come out like that, But yeah, I mean, it's totally an age thing too. I mean, about power. But I also think, it's a couple of things that, and that's why I talk about Black neighborhoods, because I think we get that grounding and we move away. And, my father used to say integration was the worst thing that happened to the Black man. And I used to be like, oh my God, Daddy, what do you mean? And what he meant was that we lost some of our inherent just groundedness. Not, that we shouldn't have integration, but that moving out of those core places where we got those values kind of, in some ways kind of disconnected us from our authentic selves.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting conversation because at the Times I was working on a couple of weeks ago, Jackie Robinson's 100th birthday. We did 100 photos for his 100th birthday. And they were talking, I was sitting with the sports guys, and they were talking about how Jackie Robinson integrating MLB, of course, begins the slow death knell of the Negro Leagues. And I think it has a parallel to integration.
Right.
That it's a different thing when you live in a neighborhood where the doctors and lawyers and teachers all live next door, partly because they have to.
And the garbage man.
And the garbage man.
Right.
But, it becomes a different thing when there's an opportunity.
Right.
And I think it's a complicated,
It is complicated.
Conversation that because we haven't been comfortable necessarily having in public, we don't always have in public.
Chicago's South Side is a unique and very special place. I
Tell me
lived in
about it.
Chicago for a few years after I graduated Northwestern. I went to school with a lot of people from Chicago, the South Side. You can be a Black person in Chicago on the South Side and never leave the South Side. I was in college. There was a girl down the hall from me who had never been to Michigan Avenue's water tower. She was like, for what?
Right. Yeah.
Why would she go there?
Yeah.
Her doctor, her dentist, the stores she needed to go to were all on the south side. And I think that, like your dad said, there's something to be said for that. There were so many different areas in Chicago that Black people lived too, because it's a big city. And I mean, to be honest, there's some stratification, there's some elitism too. That being on the south side though, you never questioned, am I good enough? Is Black okay? I mean, you just had that confidence about you. That's what I noticed from the people I knew who grew up there. And it's just so much a part of them. I have a friend who is from the South Side, and she says, I'm from Chicago. And her husband says, you know what I'm talking about. Her husband says, she's from the South Side. It's almost like its own, it's almost like its own city, because they don't need, frankly, the affirmation of whites. They don't need that. There's this whole section in Chicago, it's called Pill Hill, because that's where all the Black doctors live, on the South Side. And then there are other neighborhoods where, this kind of person lives, and that kind of person or that kind of group lives. There's schools, of course there's pluses and minuses to all this, but what I'm saying is that where Michelle grew up and where many people grow up on the South Side, their confidence it's inside them. They take it everywhere they go. They're not trying to impress a white person. They could care less what a white person. The woman down the hall from me used to have this thing. This is a little bit off topic, but it's just so funny to me. If ever she saw a white person and they gave her a little bit of a problem, or they seemed to, you go in a public place and they weren't responding, she called them all Sally. And she would say, I know Sally better give me my change, and she didn't hesitate. I mean, I always thought, actually, she was a little too quick to jump. I mean, because she wasn't going to take anything from anybody. Okay, I'm up in this store. I'm giving you my money. You better recognize. You better act right, or I'm going to leave. It's that kind of thing.
It's interesting. I mean, both of you guys, you talked in your essay about that combination of good parenting, good teachers, strong self-confidence, and the self-confidence is what you're talking about. Can you guys, because I think that in this moment that we're all in, one of the things that is really striking to me is what I think everyone can learn from what Black people have had to deal with for a long time. Like, I think this month being Black History Month might just be, how are we going to survive this moment month, or how are we going to get through, make a way out of no way month. And so can you talk about the lessons that you got, each of you, from your parents, and what do you think are the good parenting moments from your parents' specific situation that you think might apply to all parents?
Well, I thought you were going to say now, like
now, yeah, like in this moment.
Parenting now.
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Yeah, it's a challenge, I find. I mean, my father is 93. He just passed away. Just died in November, and so you start looking at their lives even closer. And I kind of, I think we probably all do this with our parents. We take them for granted, and then you're like reading through stuff, and when I'm writing the obituary and preparing what I was going to say at his funeral, and it's just like, I mean, I always knew he was sort of amazing, but and then I got like beautiful text. I got an email I see one of my friends, Tanya, from her husband about my dad. And, you don't think people are really paying attention, but they had, spent enough time around. My parents were always at birthday parties and stuff. And he said, I was always envious of, the father that you had. And he was this really just beautiful smile, always gentle, kind, grew up in the segregated South where they were still hanging people, was in the Navy on an aircraft carrier that was attacked, 3,700 men on board, 3,500, 700 survived. Is that right, Cliff? Those numbers about right? And, and even in all that he survived, still got accommodation where the guy who was next to him fighting, surviving, got a Purple Heart. still with all of that, he just had joy, and it wasn't fake. You know, it wasn't like that stuff that we read about now, just like be positive, see the good, da da da. He just really was like that. And so now I look at that lesson. That was not, be this way. My parents didn't really do that. And I also related to that with Michelle in being and becoming, where she said they let them, they, meaning she and her brother, her parents, figure out how to make their own decisions. And I think that's such an important thing to give your kids, your parents. And my parents, it was sort of like expected that we would go to college. And after that, you're gonna be, you're good. You're a good person. You try your best. It's, you're gonna screw up, and that's okay. So I think so I got that, just kind of intuited, because that's kind of, you go to work every day, you take care of your neighbors, that stuff. And with my kids, it's a whole, it's a very different world. So I try to not be a hover parent, but we live in this town where, that's very peculiar to not be a hover, mother or hover parent. So it's this constant, right? This constant, what are you doing? You're not getting an A in physics. Oh my God, your life is going to be over. To dude, do your best. It's going to be okay.
That's interesting. I think the perfection thing is part of what I'm hearing for you too, that we both talked about how Michelle has said in both Becoming as well as in everything she exhibited in the White House, that she never said she was perfect. She never pretended to be perfect. That's sort of liberating, right? And sort of a...
It is. Circling back to that imperfection though, and then wrapping the parenting thing up in it, I think what my mom did when we were growing up is what I try to do, and just, I'm not afraid for my kids to see me fail.
Right.
I'm not afraid for them to see me upset. I'm not afraid for them to see me, really angry. I'm not afraid for them to see me, crazy and silly. This is who I am, and I want them to be who they are. My mother did not have, again, segregated South. She went to high school, Hoopa City High. That's how she said it in Alabama, Hoopa City High, and she only had a high school education, and she used to tell us, you say your parents expected us you to go to college. I don't know if my mom expected. When the college application time came, my brother, sister, and I, we handled it. We filled out the applications. I said, "Mama, here, sign this." She was not. She was happy we were going, but she used to tell me, "Northwestern, where is that? That's where you want to go?" That was the end of it. She said, That was the end of it. That was the end of it. I'm telling you, that was the end of it. She could care less. She used to tell us, I don't care what you do as long as you're happy and you treat people with respect. If you're going to be and people have said this, if you're going to be a ditch digger, you better be the best goddamn ditch digger you can. Because she's salty. Be the best goddamn ditch digger you can, And so my thing is, and it is trying in this town, but my thing is, we're not going to get caught up in the okie doke.
Yeah.
We're not going to, because you know what? And, I think that when you do that, that comes from a place of privilege anyway. To think that you're going to sit and wring your hands over whether it's this college or that college, they're going to find their place, and their place is their place. It's no one else's place. It's their place. And I think that when you are bringing up children of color, you have to make them understand that, your place is your place. It's not that other place. It's not, we don't have the same values maybe, because I don't care if you get into this school, that school, that school. If you're a little shit, right?
Right.
If you're walking around and you're just,
Absolutely. That's right.
nobody should call me ever from a school. Because my mother was that way. Don't let anybody call me up. Nobody should say they saw you doing anything anywhere, but being respectful, right? And like somebody raised you. I tell my kids that even when they leave now, don't act like nobody raised you. That's my important, and just do the best you can, and you'll find your place. You'll find your place in the world. We all do, and they may not find their place. And I've come to this: they may not find their place at 17. They may not find their place at 20. They may not. I mean, I'm probably a late bloomer, so I mean, you take it. It is what it is.
Right. I have two more questions I want to ask you guys, and then I want to be able to open it up to questions in the audience. Speaking of place, you guys have both talked about, and I think it's been very important for Michelle Obama, that sense of place. Can you talk about the places that you think have been home? I would talk about maybe about this community, talk about where you vacation, and what do those spaces give you? I mean, Benilde, you talked about the Martha's Vineyard experience, and can you talk a little bit about the places that give you that sense of comfort that's a little outside of the norm?
Well, we were in South Africa in September, and oh my God, I just want to move there. We were in Johannesburg first and then Cape Town, and it was my first time in sub-Sahara Africa, and we're going to go again though. I see my girl back here. We're going to Ghana for her birthday in June, but so I don't know if it was just because it was Africa. But I look forward to going back there. That felt very just good. I love this town. I've been in Montclair it'll be 20 years in September. Raised my kids here, my daughter's here, my husband's here. Public schools, Edgemont, Glenfield, Montclair High. Different experiences for my kids at Montclair High, but, my son is a senior. And I'm just going to say this one thing, as I was thinking about this when you were talking about, and our kids are friends, they're both seniors in high school. So Ford is going to do a PG year at boarding school next year. And I can't tell you how many people say, oh my God, really? Oh, you're so brave. People have actually said that to me. I'm brave. And it's like you said, I'm not in this.
Right,
I'm not caught up in that mess. When, where is he going to school? And, I've been in meetings in the high school, in the LGI, where parents have reached over other parents to ask, what was your son's SAT scores? Not me, ask somebody else. I mean, so while I love Montclair, I really do. I think we really try hard to do the right thing and to be good people. We at least have the conversation. We have the conversation about race and class. We try to do the right thing. But, it's a lot. You guys know. I mean, it can be a lot. And so, I love it here. And I think that in terms of place, it's felt as good as, kind of a suburban community will ever feel. We're kind of trying to figure out where to go after, we sell that house with all those giant taxes. So in search of a place now, in search of a new place that's going to make,
Feel like community.
Yeah.
Interesting. How about you, Ylonda?
I like going home to Buffalo. And even though my mom's passed now 2 years and my brother and sister are there, this is funny to me anyway. I always sent my children to spend, summers with their grandma. Granny camp, we called it. So this is Buffalo, New York, and they got so much from just like sitting on the porch with her, going around the neighborhood with her. And they would come home, kids always mimic whatever it is they've heard. They would come home with the most interesting black, Ebonic kinds of things, and it would tickle them to no end. My mother's next door neighbor was asked a question. I think my mother was like the mayor of the block, and I think she said, "Jimmy, did you do something, something, something?" And Jimmy said, "I been did that." So when my girls came home from their Buffalo experience, they wanted to say every chance they got, and they would crack up laughing every time "I been did that." They had never heard anything like that. And they would say it wasn't even appropriate when they'd say it. You know, it's just like, "I been did that. I been did that." And they wanted to, do their necks, and they wanted to, and that's home to me. And when my mom passed and we went back to Buffalo for the memorial, we went because I'd never taken my kids to Niagara Falls. So we went to Niagara Falls and we spent some time, and then we drove back into the Buffalo area for the memorial. And I didn't realize this, but I guess I'd never driven around these areas before. So my kids, and at this point, they're big, and this was 2 years ago, they said to me, "Where are these white people?" I said, "Buffalo is predominantly white, sweetheart. It's predominantly white. It's 11% black." "I didn't know that." Because they had spent these summers with grandma, and they went to church with grandma. They went to the flea market. When grandma had people over to play bidwits. So this is home to them, and that feeling, I think, and I'm very happy that they carry that around, and I carry that around too. And I think if you don't have that home inside you, then this town and other towns will turn you around. Because I give people a real grill when they ask me something about SAT scores. I mean, I don't think anybody even wants to ask me.
No, it wasn't a question to me.
But yeah, I know. But I'm just saying.
You guys, when we get in line to sign books, nobody asks them. You're not going to get your book signed.
I think you can look at me and tell we're not even going to talk.
Yeah.
Don't even. And people said the same thing. My daughter Chloe took a gap year, and they told me I was so brave. She was the one going to Africa with no Wi-Fi and running on. I'm not brave. I'm just sending her. She's the one who's brave. So it's something that you have to just carry, I think, around with you. I love going to Harlem. I just love, I love you all. I do. I swear I love this town. I do. But if I had more money, and I could have like a whole brownstone somewhere uptown.
Right. And a parking space.
Exactly. I would so love, the old Harlem mostly. I do miss all those markets and stuff on 125th Street. But
I have to say something about the new Harlem, is that how great is it that there is a Harlem with a Whole Foods now? Like, it's like such a thing.
Well, you know what? Newark has Whole Foods,
the
too.
collard greens are in the bag.
They're better priced than the other Whole Foods.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah, the pricing is different. So
it is a little bit in Newark, too.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So it's great.
Yeah.
People have access to good food, which
That's important.
always have. It was a
right.
food desert right up there. I have one more question, and then we can start taking questions from the audience. And then, if you guys are slow in asking questions, I'm just going to keep pounding them. One thing I wanted to ask you about Michelle Obama. How old is she? She just had a birthday, right?
54.
54. What do you think she's shown all women about aging? Because, I think in some ways, one of the things that First Ladies, in doing this book, is that, the job of First Lady, partly what it does is it kind of teaches or is meant to model for women certain things about being a woman. And so for someone who was the first woman of the United States, who I just think at 54 is continuously saying, but also looking like she's just getting started. It's not just something she says. You feel it in everything about her. What do you think that teaches all women?
Well,
about aging.
I'm older than that, and I'm older than Ylonda, and so I'm all the way grown. I just turned 60, and so for me, I don't think of her as it's
an example of that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think black women and white women view aging? Not to make huge generalizations.
But you know what I say to my white girlfriends who always say, "Oh my God, your skin is amazing." Black women and white, our aging differences are, our hair gets really dry. It's dry anyway, natural hair. And so when it's gray, it's even dry, like 'cause anybody's gray hair is drier. So our hair gets even drier. So our issue, I think, is more our hair, and their issue, my white sisters, it's skin, right? It gets drier and stuff. So for me, and I think for many of us, D.L. Hughley says for black people, it's like, we all look like Pharrell on the outside and Morgan Freeman on the inside. So I think, I just struggle with being young on the inside.
That's hilarious. I've never heard that. Morgan Freeman on the inside. That's hilarious. Well, I saw Michelle's Becoming tour, and I traveled to Brooklyn, where I used to live many years ago, and saw her on stage in the thigh-high,
Oh, you saw that.
Oh, yeah.
sparkly Balenciaga boots.
Yes.
And you know what I said? You go. And I said, you know what? If she can work that,
Yes.
and she does own it, let's just all channel that. I mean,
Like-
I just.
But you didn't need Michelle to tell
Oh, you
us.
see.
We didn't need Michelle to tell us that. That's one thing we didn't.
I mean, but what I do.
But there is some permission giving there, right? Like, I feel like whenever I read magazines, it's always like, can you wear this? Can you wear that? And it's like, can you wear thigh-high sparkle Balenciaga boots?
Oh.
Now there is a resounding yes.
There is a resounding yes, but what I want to say most importantly is that we saw, I think for the first time, a first lady who worked out, took care of herself, put her self-care first, modeled what it meant to, eat healthy and to live her best life. I mean, when we saw her working out and making
Who
her
did you see her interviewed with? Who was
Sarah Jessica Parker.
How many people saw Michelle on tour? A few people. I saw her in Brooklyn with Elizabeth Alexander, the poet, who's extraordinary. And Elizabeth kept talking about their girls' getaway weekends. And Michelle said, oh yeah, I brought a trainer. And Elizabeth said, no, you didn't just bring a trainer. We did 3 workouts a day.
Yeah.
And Michelle said, well, one of them was yoga. And Elizabeth was just like, oh.
Yeah.
But it was great to hear her
I think that's
talk
the
about
most-
that.
yeah, I think that's
and
the
also
most
that she
important.
said that she saw all of her friends get healthier
Yeah.
Right.
over the course of the time.
Yeah.
That I thought that was really beautiful.
I think that's the most important statement she's made about aging. I mean, she looks great. I think everybody, if you care about that, you do what you need to buy and get the skincare, whatever. But she made sure that she was strong. She made sure that she was healthy, and I think that's what you see when you see her. She's living her best life. She feels good, and I feel like when you do that, it's a piece that no one can take from you. If I go to the gym, and I got to go to the gym early because I do. Got to go into the city. When I go to the gym, if I go to the gym and I get there at 5:30 and I do my workout, I'm telling you, for about 20 minutes after that, I feel like I'm the baddest ass. You just can't tell me anything. You can't tell me anything. I'm Superwoman. It doesn't last that long, but that 15 or 20 minutes, before I get on New Jersey Transit and deal with.
Right, and it's taken away, yeah.
Before I get home and make breakfast and make the lunches, you know what I mean? But that drive from DFIT to my house, I'm like, ooh, I do my own stunts, Jackie Chan with it, It's just like, I'm feeling myself. And I think that's what she's shown us.
Right.
More than anything, that's what she's shown us. Put yourself first. Take care of yourself.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both, Benilde and Ylonda. Do people have questions? Oh, you know what? We were going to have Ylonda read from. Ylonda also has an essay in our Beyonce book that's coming out, but I would love just to get to the questions. I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Do people have questions?
So I will walk around with the mic. If you could just raise your hands really high so I can see you. And we'll start up here and I'll make my way back. Okay?
First, I guess. So, all of you, well, the two of you, when you wrote about Michelle, it was almost like you knew her, like she was a best friend. can you name, and maybe all three of you, some black women that have inspired you, that make you feel like they're your best friend? And please, no athletes or entertainers.
Yes.
But famous women?
Yes.
But no athletes or entertainers?
Right.
Who make us feel like they're our best friend?
Best friend might be strong because I just don't think there is another Michelle Obama. I mean, that's I mean, we are so tight. We are just like so tight. But another good friend, you know, she would be my girl too, on another level. Because Michelle is like on all different kinds of levels. But I would say this woman who just won the 6th congressional district in I think in Georgia, Lucy McBath.
Oh, yeah.
Her son was killed, right? And she obviously, you know, to lose a child, what could be worse than that? And I feel like that indomitable spirit that would say to her, I'm mourning, I'm sad. Obviously, my life as I've known it is over, but I'm going to do something to change this. I'm gonna run, and I'm gonna win, and I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna let my child's legacy fuel me to do huge things. I mean, who knows what she's gonna do? I don't think she'll stop at just being, and not the just, but winning that seat. I feel a kinship to that. I'm not saying I'd be able to do it. Don't get me wrong, but I feel such a kinship to someone like that. I would want her to be my best friend because I would want to be that strong and that powerful and that big-hearted, you know, and big-hearted again. I mean, what was just last week was Candace Payne in Chicago, the sister who like charged 70 rooms on her American Express card to get homeless people in Chicago off the streets.
Yeah.
Oof. I mean, you don't want me to say entertainer, so I won't say Cardi B. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of people probably that wouldn't mean anything to people here. I did write something. And I'm not going to read it, but Carrie Mae Weems, who's an artist and a MacArthur fellowship winner, they call it MacArthur Genius. You know, I think we would be really good friends. She is both a creative, which speaks to me, where you live in this part of your brain. That's why I'm doing this. And then she is political, and she is super smart. And I went to see her. She was here at Montclair State, and she showed our installation that she had done. So it's not that new, but she's still going around with it. And it's about police shootings of black men. And it's deeply moving, as you can imagine. And while she was showing it, she cried several times, like cried, you know. And I've shared with you how, you know, I'm an Olympiad crier. And so I asked her in the public Q&A, how do you create your art in this when you feel so much and you just feel so beaten and like, you know, you're talking about Lucy McBath. I mean, what do you do with that? And every day you're in there. This woman, Lucy McBath, you know, took her passion and her anger and anguish and ran for office. And Carrie said, you know, well, you know, it's the art and you know, it's the work. It's about the work, and that's what I do. And I wasn't satisfied with that answer because, of course, there's the work, you know. So afterwards, I asked her on the side, and she says, well, there's always martinis and cigarettes.
Yes.
I relate to people like that. I relate to people like that because it's honest, right? We all get beaten up and beaten down, and we don't always feel good. And there are plenty of days when I just want to pull the covers over my head, figuratively and literally. But so it's people like that. Elizabeth Alexander, I love her so much.
Me too.
You know, she's another one. I mean, just right, just.
Yeah, I mean, her work is
Yeah.
just, and from the very beginning, I mean, if this is a library, they have everything. I think if you read one book of poetry this year, Elizabeth's first book, The Venus Hottentot, is just exquisite.
And then
that
her
book is-
memoir.
Her memoir is
About
just like
losing
a whole.
her husband.
Yeah, that's
Just-
another.
right.
Yeah,
So people like that, probably, yeah, writers, artists.
yeah. I think for me, I'm friendly with them, but they're not my best friends, despite my begging. Thelma Golden.
I was going to say Thelma.
The director of the Studio Museum
right.
of Harlem.
We
I
all
mean,
love
I
that.
just
But
feel-
she makes you feel like you're her friend.
She does. She does. And I have to say, I mean, she's been so good to me and to my family, and she's amazing. And Lorna Simpson. I mean, I remember being an 18-year-old intern at Time Inc. and walking over to the to MoMA, and this is why it's like great to have internships and things like that. Because I didn't know that it was donation if you're a student. So I kept going and thinking about how much money it cost, and I was making $100 a week before taxes. I was like, they will really get you if you want to be in media. And someone at Time Inc. said, oh, show them your Time Inc. ID and you can get in for free. And I walked in, and Lorna had the first Black woman to get a solo show at the MoMA. And to think that years later I was actually living in the south of France, which is something that happened. And Thelma Golden called me and she said, could you be in Paris this weekend? And I was like, oh, hell, this is like an 8-hour train ride. I was like, but it is Thelma Golden calling me to go to Paris. And she goes, do you want to have dinner with Lorna Simpson? And that was how I met Lorna Simpson. And so that to me is just one of those things where I feel like, you talk about scenarios that have never been written. I think that that's something that I feel like you don't read about when you're like a girl from Brooklyn like me, that you might someday be there having that dinner in that place with those people.
Right.
And it changes you, and it changes your sense of what's possible. So.
Okay, question? I see in the back. Okay.
Is that Monique?
Yeah.
Hi, Monique.
So these are two of my favorite friends on the stage, Benilde and Ylonda. And so going back to Michelle and talk about friendship, as I think back, I don't really recall ever seeing anything about her and her best friend. There was no Oprah and Gail with Michelle. And so until you just mentioned what you did, Veronica, about the getaway, girls' getaway, I never thought about her. I thought about her as a sister, but who's her sisterhood? And why do you think we didn't get a peek at that?
No, I read that in this essay. I mean, I think I read a little bit. I definitely wrote about two of her friends because I said, I didn't read that part, but I mentioned one of them just now, Yvonne, right, who's the one who just said she's real, she's us. But there are about 5 of them who were mommies, with her when she was, had younger kids, when they were younger kids in Chicago, who did those Saturday dance lessons and all that together. In her book, she talks about one friend, her closest friend, I guess, who died, who had cancer, died like shortly after they graduated from college. But I was so obsessed, with Michelle before we knew so much that I went on Facebook, like looking for the 2 friends that I had read about, and I saw their houses. And I mean, not that they were like, it was just like, we're having Thanksgiving dinner in here. And it was like, and you'll appreciate this because you're really into design. It was like real regular, like, I guess you can call them drapes, but just like the stuff that you buy already packaged, in the house and, in the living room. And I was like, wow, they really are just folk, none of this like custom or anything. So I think that she's, and she's kept those same friends, and probably they're all like very much on the low, like they don't want to be in, out like.
Yeah, I just think that was unfortunate that during her time as our first lady that we never got a sense of her with her girls. I just thought, why didn't we have that story?
Interesting.
Okay, anybody else?
Other
Questions?
All right, Veronica, you have more questions.
I was going to say that about portraiture, one of the essays that I loved in the book was by Sarah Lewis, who's an art historian at Harvard. And she talked about how Frederick Douglass had said during the dawn of modern photography, how important portraits are, and that basically his idea and why he took his image so seriously was that when you've had a lifetime of seeing only images of people in one way, it's really hard to imagine something different. How do you think images of her, be it like the Vogue cover or the National Portrait Gallery, like what do you think those actual just physical images do to our thinking of people like her? Because you're talking about seeing her in the style section and what that means.
And like the reason I said that how, that was generally the first section I read, and I was like, so I like those vows section. If you got married in the last 30 years and you were in vows, I would know. It's that obsessive. And because it's not just about marriage, it's social history, right? So I knew the style section. I knew what kind of people were profiled in there. And so when there she was, shiny, clean, fist pump, and I think I said that somewhere. Maybe I wrote that how she changed how the world, not for us, as her mother said. I really want to read Marion Robinson's book. But how her mother said, they ain't special.
Right.
They're the million of, Michelle and Barack's, maybe not a million, but, and so the images though for the larger culture, not for us, because we know her. But for the larger culture to see, just this, fly black woman who sometimes is all spit and polished and sometimes not, but an accomplished woman in full. Remember that cover, that New Yorker cover where they had the head rag and all of that. I just remember thinking and she was, I think she talked about that. She talked about a couple of those hits in the book, and just how devastating that was. And like you said, we're about what's her name, Maureen Dow. She doesn't know me.
She doesn't know
These
me.
people don't know me. But you know what? People talk about us, and we're not like first lady. People just But the images, absolutely, they're genius. I think with that. But you know what? It was also, not to. I don't know, but Bill Cosby, the Huxtables, say what all of his horrible stuff that came after that, but the Huxtables, you guys remember, maybe you don't because it's been a while, that changed so much for how we were seen and how we saw ourselves, in the culture.
Sure. I think some of the first really informative images were, the spit and polish, I think, of Michelle Obama, because although we have seen accomplished women, we had seen accomplished black women before. They were, like you said, Cliff, they were celebrities. They were artists or, recording stars. And to see this dark, let's not forget, okay, she's dark-skinned. She's dark-skinned, and colorism is a real thing. She's dark-skinned, and she's gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. She stands in those sheaths and she looks like a goddess. She looks like a goddess, and you read about some of the insecurities she had, but when you see that image, she's got that face that she's looking dead in the camera, and she's like, you better not try me. You know what I mean? And that's what I got. It was just like, you better not try me, because I come with all of this. I come with all of this that you see. I come with all of this up here. I'm smiling because I'm confident, I feel good, and I know damn well I look good. And she's just owning it. And I think, like you said, for us, it was, yeah. But to see her, and then honestly, to see the greater or the mainstream see it too. That's like we see it, because we are always going to recognize. I'm going to always recognize you. You know what I mean? But to see her and to see, I felt it really powerfully when I was at Barclays, because there was not a seat to be had. I don't know how many people that place seats. There were black folks, Latinx folks, they were Asian folks, there were white folks, there were white, young folks, there were old folks. Everybody had come to see Michelle Obama. And yes, I came to see her and I was moved, but to look around and to understand that on whatever level, you don't know what everybody gets from her. You only know what you get from her. But on whatever level, all of these people in this big stadium, who come and see the Nets and celebrities, they have come to see this one black, dark-skinned, strong, smart, outspoken, take no bullshit woman. They've come to see her. They've come to see her. And if they have come to see her, on some level, whether they realize it or not, they see me and they see you and they see the sister behind me. They may not recognize that they do, but they do, because she embodies all of us. So the images of her just gorgeousness and her radiant skin and her smile and her eyes and the power stances. I mean, you never saw her. I mean, I'm sure she does, but you rarely saw her like, I'm just chilling. It was like always, It's like, you better stand up. You better just come correct, because I've just walked in the room and I'm about to read all of you if you do not treat me and my husband and my children in the way that we deserve to be treated. So, I mean, the images were amazing to me. There were some bad ones, I know, and she talks about that. And, listen, we've seen what this country is. So, I mean, that wasn't really very shocking.
Right.
It's unfortunate, but not shocking to see.
Right, and they weren't of her making, which is important.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
one more question.
You made an allusion to our country as it has been shown to be in this era, and I just was wondering if you could comment on the meaning of her continuing to stay in the public eye in this painful era for many people, and also, she's sort of walked the line of not, getting in the fray, and if you feel like that the way that she's moving through this space that we're in now is going to have some sort of cumulative power for politically in the future. It's a big question, and I'm asking these soothsayers.
I mean,
Tell me what's going to happen.
Yeah, right. I pray that it does. She
I'm not
She
sure,
was asked-
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I think my understanding.
I'm sorry,
I
Ylonda.
think my question is like, what's the meaning of her staying in the public eye in this time of extremely overt racism in our culture,
And what will happen because of that.
A time in which people have been given permission to be racist in a way that they haven't for a long time. And what is the meaning of the way that she's moving through the culture right now? What does that mean for a resistance?
I will tell you, these are not my words, because someone asked her that. I guess it was Sarah Jessica Parker, who I really always thought was a bit of a lightweight. I didn't understand why she was paired with Michelle Obama. But she rose. She was pretty good. And she asked her something very similar to that at Barclays. So I'm not saying this because it's my opinion. She said, her own words were, she has to remain present, and we have to remain present and vigilant, because the hate can't win. So she's very clear, very, very, very clear on the timing of her message, the timing of, all of the attention she's gotten. She says that we have children to raise, whether or not there are biological children or not, we have children, and we can't lose hope. It's like Barack Obama, the hope. You can't lose hope. She actually teared up when she talked about it, because she said, what you see here, and she pointed to the rafters, and I'm telling you, they were all up in, it was amazing. It was amazing. She said, this is real. This is real. The nonsense, the both sides, and the craziness, that's not real. It's not real. It's unfortunate, and it's what we have allowed because of a certain complacency. But she said, this is what's real, this feeling you have right now. And I'm telling you, I saw her toward the end of 2018, when, it was such a horrible year politically. And she just renewed my hope. She really did. And I think that that's what she's trying to do with this, is to say the resistance is alive, and that you are the resistance. I am the resistance. So,
I think that, Benilde and I were at Schaumburg. Were you at Schaumburg with us? The night before the inauguration. And it was amazing because it was like church. I
Yeah.
mean, people were crying. It was 2017, and yes, that inauguration. And it was this thing where so many people were like, they can't leave. And you felt in 2017 this very sense that they were like, they were not missing us as much as we were missing them. And I think what was amazing to me is they took a step back. And I think that the imagery and narrative, I think of this book not as a celebrity biography. I mean, it is, I've written celebrity biographies. This is an exquisitely, Becoming, I think, is the book that it is because it is an exquisitely rendered, really well thought out piece of narrative that was worked on again and again and again and again. And I think what's really interesting is their deal with Netflix, is I think that their sense of storytelling and narrative being really important to our culture, you know, was it, God, I'm gonna blank on it, the guy who wrote Prince of Tides, who was that?
Conroy.
Conroy, he said, the four most important words in the English language are tell me a story. And I think that, you know, what we saw with this class of congresswomen, because everyone wanted her to run, and she said, I'm not going to run. And what we saw with this class of congresswomen is that we need some people to run, we need some people to tell stories, like these women up here, and we need people to do what they are able to do, what feels right to them. But what I love about them being interested in narrative and imagery is that it increases the sense of possible. I think that unfortunately we live in a country where there are a lot of, particularly young people, but a lot of people who have lived through 8 years of that presidency and still don't feel like they don't know what tomorrow's gonna look like, what hope looks like, how they're gonna get out of their bad situation. And I think Story gives us some of that. And so, so I think her emphasis on that is really important, because I think at the end of the day, for her to run would have been like almost to continue the thing of Obama's as heroes or counter a certain sort of political thing. And I don't think they're doing that. They're doing something much more complex. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies, and for telling your stories. This
Thank
is
you for
wonderful.
coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, Benilde and Ylonda. Thank you.